Okay, so we want to continue from where we left off under the concepts of agricultural census and survey, and we ended off on sampling, okay, within the agricultural surveys, and we'll be looking at some few calculations, okay, for today's class. How do we go about agricultural surveys, okay, in terms of methodology right from the beginning to end, and how do we obtain our yield, okay, for the crop sector. Okay, so moving on. We did mention in class last week that the main data collection schemes for the crop sector, okay, can be grouped as we see on the flow chart here, where we have, okay, surveys regarding the area, and then survey regarding what? The production. We did mention that when it comes to area surveys, okay, we could have either a census or a cadastral survey, okay, where we are interested in the dimension of the plots, okay, so we can have such data as our frame in the next survey. Then we could also have a census, okay, of the area for record keeping and for subsequent surveys. Then with regards to production too, we could have three main types. We talked about crop yield surveys. We also talked about opinion surveys and forecasting, okay, methods are the three main approaches which can be used to estimate, okay, the production, or in other words, the yield, okay, for crops, or yes, production in general. But when it comes to crops, then we'll be talking about yields. Okay. So we did mention all of this, okay. We said determination of yields is primarily for estimation of crop production, okay. And then we did mention the uses of it, that it is required for storage, for planning, okay, for comparison of performances across provincial levels, and to also determine, okay, performance of measures that are put in place by the government within the agri sector. Good. We also did touch on the three main methods for estimating crop production. We defined what agricultural census was. Then we also talked about crop cutting survey, and I think that is where we ended off, and we want to take off from here this morning. Basically, like I said in class, when we talk about crop cutting survey, then we mean going all the way to the districts, going down to the town or community level, and then selecting a farmer or a farmland, okay, a farm holding. Then on that farm holding, we can select some few plots of land, okay. It can be 1 meter square plot of land, but it should be done randomly. So when we get to the farm may be very huge, several hectares. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so once we get to the farm, let's say this is farmer A's farm, okay, and it's been selected for crop cutting survey. What we are saying is we can randomly select two plots of land on this farm. Okay. Uh-huh. And then if it's a maize farm, we will harvest the crops on this plot. It can be 1 meter by 1 meter, and as well here. Then after that, we find the average yield, okay, for this particular farm. Mhm. So we find the average yield, which is Yij on this farm. Please take note of the notation, okay? Good. So this means that we are finding the yield from a certain village, okay, and a certain number of plots, okay, within the farm. So that is going to be the sum of the yield, okay, the yield in that particular farm over the number of what crops or the number of plots that were selected, okay, within the farm. Okay, so we also did mention that techniques, okay, for crop cutting are very different depending on where we are. Okay, so point 4 says this, I'll want to touch on that point very well. So we say that the techniques used also depend on a number of factors, okay? So when we are selecting a particular technique, we need to consider, okay, a number of factors. What are some of those factors? The first one includes the administrative setup. When we talk about administrative setup, what do we mean? For example, in our country here, we have 16 regions, okay? So if all our regions, if we have, let me use maybe corn production, okay, corn production in all regions, then at the end of the day, we want to see the crop production on regional level. Okay, so at the national level, we'll be interested in reporting for regions. Okay, then at the regional level too, they will be interested in the district's performance, and it goes on and so on and so forth. In some areas, they may be interested in the zones, for example, northern zone, middle belt, southeast zone. Okay, that is how the structure of their country is, and that is how the administrative setup is. So when they are taking data, they will take data on these zones. Then we also talk about the number, or the, let me say, the resource available to you. So for example, the field staffs available to you. If you don't have enough workers or field staff to go to, let's say, 400 farms across the country to conduct a crop cutting survey, then you will be limited as to the kind of survey or the number, the sample size you are selecting, because you don't have the staff to go out there. Okay. Then again, farmer cooperation. If you are coming to my farm to come and cut some crops on my farm, a farmer might say, okay, well, by the time you are coming, I mean, you are coming to disorganize my harvest, blah, 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 blah. They will not be willing to cooperate. Okay. So farmer cooperation is very important because the farm actually belongs to the farmer, and he or she needs to cooperate for the crop cutting survey to be successful. Then we can also talk about harvest conditions, etc. Okay. Then a key thing that is missing on this slide is costs. Okay, costs evolve. You also need to consider cost going about this crop cutting survey. Very, very, very necessary. Okay, good. So in short, we are saying it is not possible to lay down a single uniform approach for crop cutting service. Okay, so moving on, we are saying that even though there is no single approach, there is a format, okay, in which all crop cutting service, okay, could go through. And I have some notes here. We are saying that the one or more plots are chosen as samples from commercial farms. The plots comprise of a small fraction of the total area in the field. I think we've explained that. And we are saying that therefore it is not possible to estimate the yield of an individual field with acceptable statistical precision unless many plots are selected. Okay, let's come to the main point. So here we are saying that cost and sampling variability considerations always indicate a survey designed for crop cutting. Okay, now the four main steps in which every crop cutting survey will go through are: one, preparation of a frame for the survey; two, the stratification method; okay, three, the method of sampling itself. How do we sample from the various stratas? And finally, the fourth point, which is how do we crop cut and run estimation? Okay, so these are the four steps. First, need a frame. How do you go about it? Secondly, you need to stratify. It could be based on administrative structures or political zones. Then we also have, how do we go about the sampling? Are we using random multi-stage sampling technique, random sampling, systematics, and how do we go about it? And we also talk about the crop cutting. How do we even cut the crops on the field? And how do we estimate the yield? Okay, so this was a summary of everything that we did mention in class the last time. Okay, now preparation of a frame. I touched on that too in class the last time. We said for drawing a sample of plots for crop cuts, we should have a list of all lands, okay, for under the crop for the season. But we know there are challenges. Especially in the developing context, country context, okay, we usually have challenges knowing all the lands, okay, which are, for example, cultivating maize in that particular season. Okay, then we say that for lands cadastrally surveyed or with high density of cultivation, lists of crops are normally available in developing countries. Okay, so cadastrally surveyed lands which have already been surveyed prior census or by any technological method, okay, they already have a documentation of what every farmer is actually planting, okay, within the season. But this is not so in the cases of low density populations like Africa, where it is possible to have just a list of farmers to whom we locate the crop lands, okay? So all we have available to us is the names of the farmers, okay? We do not have the farmland, their sizes in specification, but we can have the farmer, maybe farmer ABC is in a eastern region farming cocoa or farming something else. Okay, that is what we have. So what we are saying in short is in the case where you have the list of the farmlands, fine, then that becomes your frame. If you don't have it, make use of the the list of farmers themselves. Okay, good. And in some situations, both the list of the farmers and the list of the farms are mixed together to develop the frame. Okay, now we are saying both have advantages and disadvantages. We not want to dwell much on that. Okay, now one point here is it says one has to examine whether earlier population or housing census results could be used to build a frame by extracting agricultural household. Okay, again, we can also fall on tax lists, okay, to help us to know the list of lands being irrigated. Okay, so these are some of the data we can fall on to build our frame, okay, for sampling. Now, the next thing we want to talk about after building your frame is to talk about the stratification itself. So now we have the list of the farms or the list of the farmers. What do we do with it? Then we are saying that we have to go ahead and just a moment, let me demonstrate this. So we have a list of farms. Okay, let's assume we have all the list of farmers or farms, okay, for our frame across the country. Let's say we have the list of farms across our country here, okay, on regional basis. Okay. Yeah, so we have on regional basis, and clearly we know that on this regional basis, the productions differ. Okay, currently, I think with cocoa production, we have highest yields in the Western and then Ashanti region. Uh, yeah, they are the best performing regions when it comes to cocoa production. So there are differences in the production or the yields on regional basis. Okay, good. Then again, like we said, aside the fact that there are differences in yields on regional basis, nationally we are interested in the yields from every region. So we are interested in regional data. Okay, so based on that political or administrative uh, responsibility or that administrative data, okay, we naturally have to stratify the fields in the country into those 16 regions. Okay, so based on administrative strata, we naturally have to what demarcate all regions into the entire farmland into on regional basis. So one, we are saying that to increase the accuracy of overall population estimates, we need to ensure, or it says stratification is used in all large scale surveys. It has two purposes: to increase the accuracy of overall population estimates, and then two, to ensure that the subdivisions of the population which are themselves of interest are adequately represented. Okay, so once we've demarcated them, then we know, okay, information coming from each region. Then again, because a proportional allocation will be used. Okay, when I say proportional allocation, I mean based on the number of farms within the region, we assign the survey, okay, or the sampling. Okay, so which means that there is a fair distribution of the sample size within the study. Okay, good. So then we say that maximum overall accuracy can be attained if the strata are chosen such that the units within each stratum are similar as possible. And that means that that mean and that the mean values of the various strata differ as widely as possible. Okay, so we ensure that sampling is well done, and we also talk about the sampling units should be similar. Okay, within the stratums themselves. Okay, so what we mean is when you come to say Greater Accra, the farms in Greater Accra, okay, should have similar characteristics. Okay, but it is not necessarily that farms in Ashanti region should be yielding the same as the farms in Greater Accra. That's what we are saying. Okay, so the differences could be on the strata level, but within the strata itself, the units should be identical. Okay, now moving on, it says it is advisable to use domains of study as principal strata. That is what we've just explained. So that might be on the regional level or on district levels. It says in yield surveys, one has to provide not only an accurate and unbiased estimate of the yield rate for the country as a whole, but also similar estimates for the main administrative divisions. This is a point we need to understand. Good. Now, another point we can talk about when it comes to stratification is we are saying that the method of allocation of sample units between different strata has to be considered most efficient distribution of total sample among different strata would be the one for which an estimate with precise desired precision is obtained at minimum cost. So when we are sampling, we should ensure that we also sample in such a way that we get a desired precision level, but with minimum cost. Okay, you don't sample all around the region when we could easily do some samples of farms, because within the regional level, the farms there are identical. Okay, so we don't need to go to the extreme north, the extreme south, the extreme east and west to sample. We can run a sample which will be in a particular region to minimize cost of transportation. Okay, transporting your research personnel, and also to cut down the time for the entire survey. Okay, let's move on. These points you can read them later. So how do we go about the sampling within the strata? So we've now talked about demarcating what the total farms in the country into provincial level stratas, okay? Or let me say this regional and district level stratas. How do we go about sampling within the strata? Okay, now when you read here, it's talking about this, it is not practicable to select the crop cutting plots in a single process. That is the first point. So we can't use, obviously, by what we've explained, you can't just go ahead selecting crop cutting plots in a single process. Okay, it's not possible because already we have two phases of sampling which have been done. The first phase is stratification at the regional level, stratification at the district level. Then when we come to the district two, this is what we are saying. So at the district level, let me say I have, say, district, or let me just demonstrate using rather a regional level. So at the regional level, let's say we have 3 districts within the region. So we have this district. And for this district, you have about 10 farms. Okay. This will take time. So let me just say we have 10, okay, farm holdings here. We have 10 farm holdings in district 1, in district 2, another 10 farm holdings. There may be 20 farm holdings in district what? District 3. Okay. Then what we do is we may, yeah, so these are 3 districts, okay, and we have to select within what? The district. So we further have to, there are different ways by which we can do that. One way we can do it is because 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So what we can do is we have the frame on the district level for all the farms or all the farmers within the district. So we can make use of one of our probability sampling techniques, particularly for simple random sampling technique. Okay, then we may select 5 farms or 2 farms, okay, from this farmland, and that should be done based on a proportional allocation. Okay, we'll come to that area, but for now, in very simple, okay, explanation, if we are to select 5 farms from these 20 farms here, we can use a simple random sampling technique to select farm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, from this district for sampling purpose. Okay, but what you need to understand is, as long as all the farms are identical in this district level, assuming you selected farm, yes, or let's say this particular farm, okay, will be difficult to access. Will be difficult to access, meaning that we may have challenges in terms of transporting resource personnel there, or even cooperation of farmers, okay, may be low. Then we could easily select another farm which is close by to the rest, because all the farms are to some extent what identical within the strata. Okay, that is what we are saying. However, if there are differences, clear differences even within the districts, then we have to go another level. Okay, we have to go to another level of stratification. So let's say even among the 20 farms, we have the first 10 here on the left producing higher. There is an evidence that the first 10 on the left is producing much more than those on the right. Then that will form another level of what? Stratus. Okay, because these guys here are similar, whereas these guys here are different within the district. So that will be a third level of what? Stratification. Okay, but for the purposes of today's class, we will limit ourselves to 2 levels of stratification, which will be regional and district level. But if there are clear differences even at the district level, then you have to go to the 3rd level of what? Stratification before you apply a simple random or a systematic sampling technique. Okay, and that will apply to each of the districts within the region. That is what I'm trying to say. Okay, now let's okay, another thing we need to understand is, so okay, let me just move on. I think we need to demonstrate this one rather than talking about it. Yes. So let me touch on sampling, then we use an example to demonstrate everything that we talked about. So sampling, how do we go about? It says what we have talked about so far, okay, has to do with temporary crops. For permanent crops, the second stage units are stratified into bearing and non-bearing. Okay, so when we go to the farm, let's say we are going to, you see, it's crop production. So our crop production, because they are permanent crops like cocoa or like how do you call it, coconut. Okay, at the time you were selecting, some coconut crops may not be fruiting, so you have to watch further stratify that plot into the crops that are bearing. If you're going to select non-bearing crops, okay, where will you get a yield from? So you need to separate the bearing ones from the non-bearing ones. Then you can select from the cluster of bearing what plants, okay, or bearing lands, okay, for your crop cut survey. So we won't dwell much on that. We are still on the temporal case scenario. Now let's take some few points here. I am being detailed on my slide. You know, a lot of the material is coming from your text, your textbook. Please give me a minute. Let me talk to you. So, like I was saying, these contents are coming from the main text material. That's from you see that on your course outline. Okay, try and download it. You can easily get it online. Now, let me skip this side. I'm going to explain everything, okay, with an example. Then you can ask your questions for us to go. Now, these are also necessary points. It says on sampling, we are saying that the total number should be distributed among the different strata in proportion to the product of crop area. Okay, very important. So we always need to consider the crop area, okay, because obviously they will have more farmlands, okay, and a bigger cropping area, okay, good. So we need to consider that into our stratification. Now, let me explain with an example. All these things will come out clear once we are done. Okay. Yeah, so let's assume we have, just looks too much of a rectangle. So let me just take a hypothetical region, okay, and then we demarcate them in district levels. We will still stick to our 3 districts within that hypothetical region. Okay, so let's say we have district 1, district 2, district 3. Now in districts, and once again, we are just assuming that all the farms in the 3 districts are identical. So take note, these are our stratums. District 1, 2, and 3 becomes your stratum, okay, or our stratus. Now within these stratus, we are assuming that the farms here are identical in each of the stratus. So if they're identical, then it means there is no need to further stratify them. We'll just go ahead and employ any sampling technique like simple random sampling technique, okay? And which means that you need a list of all farmers within this land. So let's assume we have, say, 10 farms here, okay? 10 farms. So let's stick to our initial, and then let's say 20 farms over here. Then we want to do a sampling of let's say let's assume you want to sample about 10 farms. Okay, let's assume 10 farms, okay, from the district. Now we'll work on farm level, but more practically, we could be talking about, you see, a district is composed of, let me say, towns or villages. You understand? And then within the villages, you have the farms. But as we speak now, we are assuming that on the district level, we have just farms. Okay, so 10 farms, 10 distinct. But if we are being very ideal or more practicable, then this 10, 10, 10 should apply to what? Villages. Okay, then after that, we can select, should apply to what? The villages. Then within the villages, we can talk about the farms. Okay, how many farms does each village have? Okay, good. So let me demonstrate that too for purpose of clarity. Good. So assuming there are I do not wish to make this complicated. So let's change the numbers. Somebody will come and mix up the figures. So let's assume that within this district, there are 4 villages. Okay, 4 villages within the district. And here we have 2 villages. Here we have 2 villages. Okay, good. Let me use different marker. Okay, so we have 3 districts, 4 villages here. The villages are not stratas. You see, they are not stratas. All the farms within the stratum themselves are identical. But in each village, we have, let's say village 1 has 5 farms. Okay, there are 5 farms here. There are 5 farms in village 2. There are 5 farms in village 3. 5 farms in village 4. So it means that in all, you have 20 farms, okay, within district 1. So there are 20 farms, okay, in district 1. We just want to make it very basic, okay, example. Then in district 1, we're just talking about district 3. So in district 1, same, let's use the same quantity. So here we have 5 farms here, 5 farms there. District 2, we have 5 farms, 5 farms. Okay, so this is more realistic, having it in villages and then farms within what? The villages. Then that gives us the 20, 10, and 10 farms. So you know the number of farms within the district, which will be our capital N, okay, is going to be what? 40 farms. Good. Now, assuming we want to select 10 farms, okay, we want to observe 10 farms. Is it not too much? Okay, let's say we want to select for 10 farms from this district. How do we go about it? So what we are saying is the first stage, okay, with this is you need a list of farms. So you can have the total number of farms, which will be our capital N of 40 for this district. Okay, then the next thing to do, the next step 2 will be to proportionally allocate the farms. Okay, because this farm has districts, or let me say farm, this yes, district A3. Okay, district 3 has 20 farms, and the total number of farms here is what? Is 40. Okay, good. times 100 will give us 50% of all what? Of all the farmlands. When we go to the next farm, which is District 1, that consists of 10%, 10 over 40 times 100%, which is going to be 25%. And similarly, D2 will also have 25%. So these are their proportion with regards to the total number, the frame. Okay, good. Now, consideration is, instead of looking at the numbers, sometimes consideration is rather used in the total area. Okay, in the total area instead of the total number of farms in there. So we'll come to that, but let me just demonstrate with this example. So we are using numbers. So this is 50%, 25%, 25%. Okay, but our objective is to sample what? 10 farms. So if I want the number of farms in the sample, let me construct a table like this. So here, your sample, okay, for D3 will be 50% of the 10 farms, which is going to be what? 5. Then for D2, we have 25% of the 10 farms. It's supposed to be 2.5. So we can make a decision, make this 2.5. You don't have 2.5 communities, you understand? So we can make it 2, and D3 can be 3. It can be based on the judgment of how do we call it, cost. Okay, it's supposed to be 2.5 and 2.5. That's what we are saying. But you don't have 2.5 farms. It's a list. It's a list. So we either take 2 from that community, or we make it 3 from that community. But the 2 of them should add up to 5, because we are going for 10 farms. Or another way you can also go about it is to approximate both of them if you have enough resources, and make it 3-3. So that at the end of the day, instead of 10 farms, you are rather going to sample what? 11 farms from the various farms. Good. So we are going to select 5 farms from District 3, 3 farms from District 1, and then 3 farms from District 2. Okay, this is what we refer to as proportional allocation. Okay, using the number of farms. Okay, for proportional allocation. Now, in the same context, if we were rather going to use the area, the total area, instead of the total number of farms, let me just write it by it. So if we have area is, let's say, I'll use the same dimensions. Okay, this time we are having 40 hectares, okay, of land. And this district is accounting for 20 hectares. Okay, this district is accounting for 10 and 10. Then in the long run, we will still do this. It will go through the same process. By this time, remember, we are not talking about numbers, we are talking about hectares. Okay, cool. So it will still come down to 50%, 25%, 25%. Then if we want to select, let's say, 10 hectares of land, okay, good. We use proportional allocation. So you do the calculation, it will still come down to 5 hectares, 3 hectares, 3 hectares, okay? Then you think about how you are going to go about those number of hectares within the various stratas. Okay, so let me come back to the example using the numbers and see how we are going to end up selecting our farms. Good. So at this point, we are at a stage where we are supposed to select what? 5 farms from 20. 5 from 20, 3 from 10, and then 3 from 10. How do we go about it? We have the list of everyone here, right? So all we need to do is to use a simple simple random technique, okay, to run the selection. So out of the 20, like I demonstrated earlier, let me just wipe this thing off and then touch on it again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Please, class, if you have any question, please raise your hand. I know this stage is sometimes quite complicated. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Let me explain before I go to the next stage. If there is any question, you can ask at this point. Following. So in the next stage, then it means we are selecting 5, okay? So we can use simple random method or systematic random technique, okay, to select the 5. So we can select this guy, we can select this guy, okay, from balloting technique or using random numbers, okay? We know how to go about simple random. So we will select these farms. So let's list the selected farms. So we have 1, 2, 3, let's say 4 and 5. Okay, so these farms have been selected. So we have 5 farms from what? District 1. Then you do the same thing in District 2 to obtain the 3. Okay, and then the same in District 3 to obtain the 3. Now, someone will ask, sir, but in this district there were 4 villages, not so. We said the villages do not indicate what? Do not indicate because the use in all the villages are identical. Okay, that is the assumption for this population. Then there are no stratas, so we can select randomly from what? That district. Okay, someone will say, okay, fine, but we want to possibly see a representation of, that is if it is necessary in the administrative sense, okay, and we want to see a representation of, say, village A and village B. Like we said, there is no one cut design for a crop casting survey. In our country here, we are only interested in the district level and the regional level. Nobody is interested in what is happening in the various villages. You get it? So there is no need to further partition the district into a village. Okay, good. So we may not need to do that in the case of Ghana, but in other places it may be necessary. So we have our farms by a simple random technique. We will also conduct a simple random technique from here, and same here. Now, what do we do? Now that we've selected all 10 farms, let me demonstrate everything on the board. And I would advise you to watch the video after the class. Very important, okay? And so that it syncs. Yeah, so let's say here we were supposed to have 3 farms, okay? They had 10. 10 means we have 2, 3, 4. So we have 10, and we've selected sample 6, 7, 8 here, okay? Then we are going to have from here to, we have 10 farms. So we have 9, 10, and 11. Don't forget we approximated the 2.5 to 3. So we are getting 11 farms, okay, in all. Now, when we go to the farm, okay, on farm 1, we need to talk to what? Each farmers in the farms, okay, that we have selected your farm for a crop cutting survey, and we want to make arrangement. So arrangement must be made way ahead so that the farmer is willing to tell you whether he wants you to come and cut his crops for the study. If not, you have to what? Sample another in place of that farmland. Okay, good. Then again, the need for, or the reason why we even negotiate with the farmer or speak to the farmers is they have to inform you as to when the crops will be ready for what? The harvesting, so that you can conduct your crop cutting survey. Okay, so in terms of willingness and in terms of the time for harvesting, you need to go down to the field and then get the farmers involved. Okay, so we have done that stage 2. We've spoken to the farmers. We are set. Now, what next do we do? We said we don't need to harvest all the farm area. Okay, all we need to do is we can select out of the 30 farmlands on, say, farm A, we can select 3, okay, plots. And when I say plot, it's not a very big plot. It can be 1 meter square, okay, for how do we call it? For, let's use corn, 1 meter square of corn. And then we take the yield. Okay, so that will give you your first yield from that farm. And those yields will be, it is on district 1 from farm 1. Okay, we are getting the yields. So you get 3 yields from district 1, farm 1. That is going to be, let's say the yield was 10 grams. Then on the next plot, you are getting 11 grams. On the next plot, you are getting 11.5 grams. Okay, within the same farm. So we'll add everything up and then divide by what? Divide by what? 3. So that should give us a yield for this farm. Okay, so let's say the average yield for this farm is going to be what? 11 point, I think if you can do the calculation for me, I will appreciate it. So 11, no, that should be 10 point something. Let's assume it's around 10.8 or something. Okay, yes. So that will be the average for this farm. Then similarly, you have to find the average for this farm. Let's say you selected 3, you do the same thing here, do the same thing here, do the same thing here. Okay, so that will give you your the various yields here, the formula which I'll touch on when we get back to class. So that will be yi is equals to yij. The yij's are the yields we are getting from the I represent the district, and then the J will represent the farm on which we are getting the information. Okay, good. So we have that information from here. And then if you want the yi for this particular, okay, district, you are going to add up all the average yields. Okay, so you have your first one here, y1 here, y2 from here, y3 from here, okay, y4, y5 from here. When you are done, add everything up. So we are going to sum all the various averages, okay, mean yield, mean yield, mean yield, mean yield, mean yield, and then divide by 5. Okay. Yes. Good. So we have the 10.8 as the mean yield here. Then we can also have, let's say, 10.5 plus the remaining 3, okay, all over 5 to give us the yield for that particular strata, which is the district strata. Okay, so that is one way of going about it. Another way of going about it is, because we said it's a simple random sample and all the units are identical, okay, we could also have just taken all the farms. I think I will leave that part. I'll leave that section when we meet in class. We'll touch on that. But let me just be brief on that one. I won't go into details. So let's say we have 3 farms from here. We have 3 farms from, so in all we have 15 farms. So if you want the average, because we use a simple random sampling technique, if you want the average from that particular strata, okay, then it's just going to be what? Your y from district 3 is going to be all the observations, okay, in the various plots you cut throughout the district. So 11.5 plus, okay, the yield from this farm, all the 3 yields, you add them. You come to all the 3 yields from here, add them. So you are going to have in all 15 observations divided by what? Divided by 15. Okay, it will still give you the same calculation we did earlier, because it's a simple random sample used, and there were no demarcations what in that particular stratum. So we can do that, and that is the formula you are seeing here, which is yi is equals to yij subscript over ni. Good. Now, after you've obtained the mean for the various stratas, which is y3, y1, and y2, okay, then you can also find the mean for the entire region. We can find the mean for the entire region, okay, as so the mean for the entire region, let's say region A, is going to be your yield from what? Your 3rd district, 2nd district, plus the yield for what? District 1 divided by what? Divided by 3. Okay, that will give you the average for that particular what? Region. So this time around, we are looking at the entire region, not on district level. So for the entire region, we add all the various yields from the various districts, which is 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and divide by 3. That should give us a yield for that area. So that is how the design will go about in terms of sampling and the allocation of samples and how the estimation will be done, okay, in the long run. Now, let me touch on one or two things, and I have another meeting to attend, but I'll just touch on one or two. We'll also look at this formula, okay? We are saying that in sampling, ideally, the sample is supposed to be allocated based on a proportionate allocation, okay? But sometimes for the reasons of costs and resource personnel, sometimes we are not able to achieve, okay, that. And anytime you fail to achieve proportional allocation within stratification, it will affect your variation and the precision of your estimate, okay? So we are saying that if that is not done, then another way to estimate your true average yield from the region is to factor in the area. You use the areas. Let's say you give equal allocation to farm A. You give equal allocation to farm A. So instead of allocating 5 farms to district 3, okay, and then 3 farms to district 1 and then 3 to district 2. You decided to give all of them 3, 3, 3. When you do that, the area for district 3 is twice of the rest, okay? So your estimation will be very, very, very inaccurate. So when such a proportion is allocated because of cost, you don't want to travel throughout the entire region. Maybe the farms are very scattered in region 3. So you decided to use 3. No problem. What you have to do is to factor in the total area, cropping area, okay, for the various districts. So this formula actually gives us an estimate which looks at a weighted, okay, yield based on the area. And we'll see how the estimation too is done when we come to class. Good. Now moving on. Moving on, the final stage this time is how to go about the crop cutting itself. I'll skip this point. I think I've talked about it a lot. Now, what you do is when it is time for crop cutting, you've already informed the farmer. So it's time you go there, farmer is aware you are cutting the crop. Now, what you need to do is you need to get the farmers involved and those who harvest and then how they harvest, because it is that information which has been, or that it is the same process they have used over time, okay, to estimate the previous yields. So let the farmers and those who have been cutting the crops be the same people who will cut the crops on the farm. Okay, good. Now, it's not easy to just go about cutting crops. Some are experts in doing that, so let them do it. Then the next thing you do is, so for example, in the case of corn production, once you cut the cobs, what you do is you don't just remove the corn from the cob. Okay, you need to expose it on the sun for a while, let it dry a bit. Then what you do is you have to weigh the corn. Okay, weigh the corn. Then after weighing it, you record the weight of the corn down, and then take the corn back. Okay, go and dry the entire sample or the sub-sample. Make sure it is well dried. Some will recommend a fortnight. Okay, once it's well dried, then you can take the grain off the cob and then measure the grain itself. Okay, then we can get the exact yield, measure the grain itself and measure the cob too. Okay, good. Then we can get the exact weight of what? A grain that we harvested. That will give you the true grain amount from the field. Okay, that is what you use in estimating the average yield of the various farms. Okay, yeah, so that's the formula you are seeing here. These are the formulas you use to estimate the average yield. Now, will be to this was a past question, and for example, I could ask you, design a crop cutting survey to estimate crop yield in a certain area, okay, or a region. Yes, in a region. Then we can I'll ask you to outline details in this step of the sample design. When I say outline the details, I expect the details in what? In the 4 main steps, okay, which deals with designing your frame, to stratification, to selection of your sample and that sampling, and to the crop cutting. How do you go about each of them? We want details. Then what are some of the issues that can affect your design? We've already talked about them. The choice of your design can depend on your cost, your resource allocations. The administrative factors and so on and so forth, okay? And how they affect your design can all be captured under this section. Yeah, on that note, if there are any questions you can ask. If not, I want to wrap up the class here because there is another meeting upcoming. If there's any question, let me take it. If there is any question, yes, Robert.
Sir, please, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Please, I want to know how many weeks or days does it take to complete maybe a cutting system?
Oh, it will depend on the crop.
Okay.
It will depend on the crop. So the time it will take for the crop to yield, that is when you go and cut it. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Osei.
I was thinking the calculation aspects. When we meet face to face, we can at least go over it again.
But you've not done the calculation. So when we meet face to face,
like
you've not done calculation proper. We just look at the steps. Yes, Salifo.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
I heard you saying that you estimate the cost of the meat and then the what do you call it?
So you remove the grain from the carbs and then weigh them.
You weigh the
grain.
The grain and you weigh the carbs.
Yes, you need you see, for the first time when you took it from the farm, how do we call it, from the plant, there was some amount of water in it. Yes. That is why we are drying. So we also want to know, to understand, how much water content is in the entire. So for us to know, for future purposes, you may have to measure the carb, measure the grain, then you will know the amount of water, average content of water in each carb at the time of harvesting. Okay. If you don't do that, subsequently, if you measure only the grain, subsequently you not have an idea of how much content, the content of water that could be there in the carb. Okay, I think okay, somebody says I was thinking to depend on the size of the farm. No. Selection. Are you talking about sampling? I saw shadling. Charlie, were you referring to sampling?
No, the question that Robert asked, you were saying how many, you were saying something, how many days will something come, if it can come again.
Yeah, that is where you came with the, it will depend on the number of, yeah, so,
Yes,
yes, so as much as possible, because you see, it's a farm which has identical crops. So you don't want to be cutting too many too. The farmer has his own work to do. So you may decide that I'm cutting about 2 plots or 3 plots on each farm when you go there.
Is the crop cutting the same thing as the harvesting?
Yes, we are harvesting,
Okay.
but we are harvesting not the whole farm. We are just harvesting, let me say 1 square meter, three 1 square meters on the entire farm. So when you get to the farm, you can randomly select, okay, I'm going to have 1 square meter here, 1 square meter in the middle, 1 square meter at the far end. Then you cut it, but you are not cutting the entire farm.
Of that, the farmer should draw your attention that it's time for harvesting.
Yes, yes, that is why you need to work hand in hand with the farmer.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Robert.
Sir, please, I want to know the expenses, the cost involved in taking data from such farms. Is who will bear that cost? Is it the researcher or maybe from the government?
Yeah, it's a researcher. It's a researcher, not the government. So we have special institutes. So for example, for cocoa, which is of benefit to the government, you have the Cocoa Research Institute, which conducts survey from time to time. Okay, and then we have some institutes also, which are supported by the UN to conduct some of, and even the IMF to conduct those kind of studies within the country.
Thank you.
Is Priscilla in class today?